17206.
Hey, last responder, what's up, bub? Getting ready to jump on the turnpike. Heading to East Cleveland. Hello, Struck.
17 is transporting 1 to Fremont, starting in Charleston.
Guys got in here before the stream bot did. For 3. A triple homicide. I kept catching every one of your streams after you went off, then grabbing. Sweet. That was last night. Yeah, man, I kept catching all your streams. I'm like, oh, he's live. I click on it and I'm like, boop, you're already done. Damn it. I liked them all, though. I'm out in the country here until I get on the turnpike. This is country. Oh, okay. Used to be straight country here. There's the turnpike, though. I just need to get on it. Probably not even going to get to the job site until about a little after 5:30 because I'm going to have to stop for gas, too. And a 2-hour drive home. Yeah, I saw that. I was watching that on Bow's stream. He got lucky. He only got 3 tickets. That could have arrested him and towed that car. He drives like a fucking asshole. Surprised it took that long to get him pulled over. Yeah. Yeah. What's that tell you? What does the FBI call him? A paid human resource or something like that? Confidential informant? We in the street say snitch. I mean, he's straight up snitched live on his own streams. Yeah. Yeah, I've seen him just snitch people out on his own streams besides his doxing. Yeah, he spends too much time talking to those piggies privately. It's like talking to a CO behind closed doors. You don't do it. Even if you're not snitching, you just don't do it. The impropriety is there. Yeah, I know. We did last night again, too. His full name. I was thinking the wifey was going to get him done up. No, she was on fire. I was yelling, show crazy wife, show crazy wife.
Negative for special detail.
He just had the camera on himself. They must have unblocked me though, because last time I was in there trolling, I couldn't see any of my, nobody could see my chat, but I could see it last night on Bao's stream.
You just called it, I said it's not okay.
No, they don't care. Hey, Brandon. We did the shopping stream earlier. We got 5 pairs of steel toe boots for guys. Stop and take ticket. I don't use the Easy Pass. I don't need one more signal coming out of my car. There's enough of them already. Yeah, it was the stream before this from earlier today. Actually, the signal stayed pretty good inside of Meyer. Yeah, you'll get that in those types of housing, man. I used to work MS, so I know how that goes. I did it in Detroit. From Detroit to Ann Arbor in Michigan. All right, we're getting on the turnpike here, guys. So I'll show you. It's been pouring all day. It finally just let up. There's another band coming through though, according to Ryan Hall, y'all. All right, exit 151. That's going to cost me $3.75. Let's save those receipts. All right, I was going to get a book going once some people got in here, and I knew I was on the turnpike. I just downloaded a new book, Audible book, called Nordic Tales. If Anna was in here, I'd play the Norm Macdonald autobiography. That's 7 hours long. Holy shit. I got Nordic Tales, based on a true story, which is Norm Macdonald. I've got Jordan B. Peterson, 12 Rules for Life, and his Beyond Order, which are another 12 rules, I think. Spy Secrets That Can Save Your Life by Jason Hansen. That one looks interesting.
What?
And I have another Michael Malice book.
Yes, sir. What?
Right, Fremont City mileage 13.9.
Yes, sir.
So, trying to figure out what to listen to. I think I'm going to go the Nordic Tales.
This is Audible. Chronicle Books presents Nordic Tales, folk tales from Norway, Sweden, Finland, Iceland, and Denmark by Chronicle Books. Read by Alan Corduna and Juha Sorala. The Forest Bride. The story of a little mouse who was a princess. Finland. There was once a farmer who had 3 sons. One day, when the boys were grown to manhood, he said to them, "My sons, it is high time that you were all married. Tomorrow, I wish you to go out in search of brides." "But where shall we go?" the oldest son asked. "I have thought of that too," the father said.
Good dog.
"Do each of you chop down a tree, and then take the direction in which the fallen tree points. I'm sure that each of you, if you go far enough in that direction, will find a suitable bride." So the next day, the 3 sons chopped down trees. The oldest son's tree fell pointing north. "That suits me," he said,
Hey, Chuck.
for he knew that to the north lay a farm where
Welcome,
a
Miss
very
Bronson.
pretty girl lived. The tree of the second son, when it fell, pointed south.
We're heading to East Cleveland. We got a bit of a drive here, but at least another hour.
Thinking of a girl
Hour and
that he had
15
often
minutes.
danced with, who lived
No
on the
worries,
farm
man.
to the south. The youngest son's tree, the youngest son's
Tag,
name
bag, and
was
haul.
Veikko. When it fell, pointed straight to the forest. "Ah, the older brothers laughed. "Veikko will have to go courting one of the wolf girls or one of the foxes." They meant by this that only animals lived in the forest, and they thought they were making a good joke at Veikko's expense. But Veikko said he was perfectly willing to take his chances and go where his tree pointed. The older brothers went gaily off and presented their suits to the 2 farmers whose daughters they admired. Veikko, too, started off with brave front, but after he had gone some distance in the forest, his courage began to ebb. "How can I find a bride," he asked himself, "in a place where there are no human creatures at all?" Just then he came to a little hut. He pushed open the door and went in. It was empty. To be sure, there was a little mouse sitting on the table, daintily combing her whiskers, but a mouse, of course, doesn't count. "There's nobody here," Veikko said aloud. The little mouse paused in her toilette and, turning toward him, said reproachfully, "Why, Veikko, I'm here." "But you don't count. You're only a mouse." "Of course I count," the little mouse declared. "But tell me, what were you hoping to find?" "I was hoping to find a sweetheart." The little mouse questioned him further, and Veikko told her the whole story of his brothers and the trees. "The 2 older ones are finding sweethearts easily enough," Veikko said. "But I don't see how I can off here in the forest, and it will shame me to have to go home and confess that I alone have failed." "See here, Veikko," the little mouse said. "Why don't you take me for your sweetheart?" Veikko laughed heartily. "But you're only a mouse. Whoever heard of a man having a mouse for a sweetheart?" The mouse shook her little head solemnly. "Take my word for it, Veikko. You could do much worse than have me for a sweetheart. Even if I'm only a mouse, I can love you and be true to you." She was a dear, dainty little mouse, and as she sat looking up at Veikko with her little paws under her chin and her bright little eyes sparkling, Veikko liked her more and more. Then she sang Veikko a pretty little song, and the song showed her how long he was in
Be back.
returning. Well, the older brothers, when they got home, boasted loudly about their sweethearts. "Mine," said the oldest, "has the rosiest, reddest cheeks you ever saw. And mine," the second announced, "has long yellow hair." Veikko said nothing. "What's the matter, Veikko?" the older brother asked him, laughing. "Has your sweetheart pretty pointed ears or sharp white teeth?" You see, they were still having their little joke about foxes and wolves. "You needn't laugh," Veikko said. "I found a sweetheart. She's a gentle, dainty little thing gowned in velvet." "Gowned in velvet?" echoed the eldest brother with a frown. "Just like a princess?" second brother sneered. "Yes," Veikko repeated, "gowned in velvet like a princess. And when she sits up and sings to me, I'm perfectly happy." "Huh," grunted the older brothers, not at all pleased that Veikko should have so grand a sweetheart. "Well," said the old farmer after a few days, "now I should like to know what those sweethearts of yours are able to do. Have them each bake me a loaf of bread, so that I can see whether they're good housewives." "Mine will be able to bake bread, I'm sure of that," the oldest brother declared boastfully. "So will mine," chorused the second brother. Veikko was silent. "What about the princess?" they said with a laugh. "Do you think the princess can bake bread?" "I don't know," Veikko answered truthfully. "I'll have to ask her." Of course, he had no reason for supposing that the little mouse could bake bread, and by the time he reached the hut in the forest, he was feeling sad and discouraged. When he pushed open the door, he found the little mouse as before seated on the table, daintily combing her whiskers. At the sight of Veikko, she danced about with delight. "I'm so glad to see you," she squeaked. "I knew you would come back." Then, when she noticed that he was silent, she asked him what was the matter. Veikko told her. "My father wants each of our sweethearts to bake him a loaf of bread. If I come home without a loaf, my brothers will laugh at me." "You won't have to go home without a loaf," the little mouse said. "I can bake bread." Veikko was much surprised at this. "I never heard of a mouse that could bake bread." "Well, I can," the little mouse insisted. With that, she began ringing a small silver bell. Tinkle, tinkle, tinkle. Instantly, there was the sound of hurrying footsteps, tiny, scratchy footsteps, and hundreds of mice came running into the hut. The little Princess Mouse, sitting up very straight and dignified, said to them, "Each of you, go fetch me a grain of the finest wheat." All the mice scampered quickly away and soon returned one by one, each carrying a grain of the finest wheat. After that, it was no trick at all for the Princess Mouse to bake a beautiful loaf of wheaten bread. The next day, the three brothers presented their father the loaves of their sweethearts' baking. The eldest one had a loaf of rye bread. "Very good," the farmer said. "For hard-working people like us, rye bread is good." The loaf the second son had was made of barley. "Barley bread is also good," the farmer said. But when Veikko presented his loaf of beautiful wheaten bread, his father cried out, "What? White bread? Oh, Veikko now must have a sweetheart of wealth." "Of course," the older brother sneered. "Didn't he tell us she was a princess? Say, Veikko, when a princess wants fine white flour, how does she get it?" Veikko answered simply. "She rings a little silver bell, and when her servants come in, she tells them to bring her grains of the finest wheat." At this, the older brothers nearly exploded with envy until their father had to reprove them. There, he said. "Don't grudge the boy his good luck. Each girl has baked the loaf she knows how to make, and each in her own way will probably make a good wife. But before you bring them home to me, I want one further test of their skill in housewifery. Let them each send me a sample of their weaving." The older brothers were delighted at this, for they knew that their sweethearts were skillful weavers. "We'll see how her ladyship fares this time," they said, sure in their hearts that Veikko's sweetheart Whoever she was would not put them to shame with her weaving. Veikko too had serious doubts of the little mouse's ability at the loom. Whoever heard of a mouse that could weave, he said to himself as he pushed open the door of the forest hut. Oh, there you are at last, the little mouse squeaked joyfully. She reached out her little paws in welcome, and then in her excitement she began dancing about on the table. Are you really glad to see me, little mouse? Veikko asked. Indeed I am, the mouse declared. Am I not your sweetheart? I've been waiting for you and waiting, just wishing that you would return. Does your father want something more this time, Veikko? Yes, and it's something I'm afraid you can't give me, little mouse. Perhaps I can. Tell me what it is. It's a sample of your weaving. I don't believe you can weave. I never heard of a mouse that could weave. Tut tut, said the mouse. Of course I can weave. It would be a strange thing if Veikko's sweetheart couldn't weave. She rang the little silver bell, tinkle, 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 and instantly there was the faint scratch, scratch of 100 little feet as mice came running in from all directions and sat up on their haunches, awaiting their princess's orders. Go each of you, she said, and get me a fiber of flax, the finest there is. The mice went scurrying off, and soon they began returning one by one, each bringing a fiber of flax. When they had spun the flax and carded it, the little mouse wove a beautiful piece of fine linen. It was so sheer that she was able, when she folded it, to put it into an empty nutshell. Here, Veikko, she said, here in this little box is a sample of my weaving. I hope your father will like it. Veikko, when he got home, felt almost embarrassed, for he was sure that his sweetheart's weaving would shame his brothers. So, at first, he kept the nutshell hidden in his pocket. The sweetheart of the oldest brother had sent, as a sample of her weaving, a square of coarse cotton. Not very fine, the farmer said, but good enough. The second brother's sample was a square of cotton and linen mixed. A little better, the farmer said, nodding his head. Then he turned to Veikko. And you, Veikko, has your sweetheart not given you a sample of her weaving? Veikko handed his father a nutshell, at sight of which his brothers burst out laughing. Ha ha ha, they laughed. Veikko's sweetheart gives him a nut when he asks for a sample of her weaving. But their laughter died as the farmer opened the nutshell and began shaking out a great web of the finest linen. Why, Veikko, my boy, he cried, how ever did your sweetheart get threads for so fine a web? Veikko answered modestly. She rang a little silver bell and ordered her servants to bring her in fibers of finest flax. They did so, and after they had spun the flax and carded it, my sweetheart wove the web, you see. Wonderful, gasped the farmer. I have never known such a weaver. The other girls will be all right for farmers' wives, but Veikko's sweetheart might be a princess. Well, concluded the farmer, it's time that you all brought your sweethearts home. I want to see them with my own eyes. Suppose you bring them tomorrow. She's a good little mouse, and I'm very fond of her, Veikko thought to himself as he went out to the forest. But my brothers will certainly laugh when they find she's only a mouse. Well,
blue line charger.
I don't care if they do laugh. She's been a good little sweetheart to me, and I'm not going to be ashamed of her. So, when he got to the hut, he told the little mouse at once that his father wanted to see her. The little mouse was greatly excited. I must go in proper style, she said. She rang the little silver bell and ordered her coach and five. The The coach, when it came, turned out to be an empty nutshell, and the 5 prancing steeds that were drawing it were 5 black
Good
mice.
news.
The little mouse seated herself in the coach, with a coachman mouse on the box in front of her, and a footman mouse on the box behind her. Oh, how my brothers will laugh, thought Veikko. But he didn't laugh. He walked beside the coach and told the little mouse not to be frightened, that he would take good care of her. His father, he told her, was a gentle old man and would be kind to her. When they left the forest, they came to a river which was spanned by a footbridge. Just as Veikko and the nutshell coach had reached the middle of the bridge, a man met them coming from the opposite direction. "Mercy me!" the man exclaimed as he caught sight of the strange little coach that was rolling along beside Veikko. "What's that?" He stooped down and looked, and then with a loud laugh he put out his foot and pushed the coach, the little mouse, her servants and her 5 prancing steeds all off the bridge and into the water below. "What have you done? What have you done?" Veikko cried. "You've drowned my poor little sweetheart!" The man, thinking Veikko was crazy, hurried away. Veikko, with tears in his eyes, looked down into the water. "You poor little mouse," he said. "How sorry I am that you are drowned. You were a faithful, loving sweetheart, and now that you are gone, I know how much I loved you." As he spoke, he saw a beautiful coach of gold drawn by 5 glossy horses go up the far bank of the river. A coachman in gold lace held the reins, and a footman in pointed cap sat up stiffly behind. The most beautiful girl in the world was seated in the coach. Her skin was as red as a berry and as white as snow. Her long golden hair gleamed with jewels, and she was dressed in pearly velvet. She beckoned to Veikko, and when he came close, she said, "Won't you come sit beside me?" Me, Veikko stammered, too dazed to think. The beautiful creature smiled. "You were not ashamed to have me for a sweetheart when I was a mouse," she said. "And surely now that I am a princess again, you won't desert me." "A mouse?" Veikko gasped. "Were you the little mouse?" The princess nodded. "Yes, I was the little mouse under an evil enchantment, which could never have been broken if you had not taken me for a sweetheart, and if another human being had not drowned me. Now the enchantment is broken forever. So come, we will go to your father, and after he has given us his blessing, we will get married and go home to my kingdom." And that's exactly what they did. They drove at once to the farmer's house, and when Veikko's father and his brothers' sweethearts saw the princess's coach stopping at their gate, they all came out bowing and scraping to see what such grand folk could want of them. "Father," Veikko cried, "don't you know me?" The farmer stopped bowing long enough to look up. "Why, bless my soul," he cried. "It's our Veikko." "Yes, father, I am Veikko, and this is the princess that I'm going to marry." "A princess, did you say, Veikko? Mercy me, where did my boy find a princess?" "Out in the forest where my tree pointed." Well, the farmer said, "where your tree pointed. I've always heard that was a good way to find a bride." The older brothers shook their heads gloomily and muttered, "Just our luck. If only our trees had pointed to the forest, we too should have found princesses instead of plain country wenches." But they were wrong. It wasn't because his tree pointed to the forest that Veikko got the princess. It was because he was so simple and good that he was kind even to a little mouse. Well, after they had got the farmer's blessing, they rode home to the princess's kingdom and were married. And they were happy as they should have been.
If I can stay connected, we're heading to East Cleveland.
I thought it was a street play, right? So I started running over there, I started videotaping, and I see some blood, and so I just thought maybe like there was a bloody nose or something. My brain wasn't really allowing to believe what just happened. I knew he was dead. This is my first time ever experiencing this, right? So like, my brain just like, he's dead. And so I just started screaming, sounded else knew the murderer is standing right there.
What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from the recording. I hope you have an absolutely wonderful day. Social media does some strange things to people, doesn't it? The thirst for clout is second to none. It's a bizarre phenomenon that makes what would be a normal person do some of the most heinous stuff I've ever seen. This particular TikToker might have finally taken the cake after a terrible incident happened in Canada. The mindset of someone to then pick up their phone and film it really makes me weep for the future. That said, the immense backlash received by this kid does seem to bring some amount of faith. So a terrible thing happened, and of course, what people do is they get out and film it. By the way, it's a quick shout out. Coffee Brand Coffee, my coffee company, just launched 2 additional cold brew products. I'm going to leave a link in the description below. Our Colombian cold brew is already immensely popular. It's probably our top 3 selling item on the website. So now we turn our dark roast and our Ethiopian light roast into pre-measured cold brew bags. They just go right in a jug like this, sit in your fridge overnight. You've got a big old pot of cold brew waiting for you in the morning to test out. I put together a sample pack too. Be awesome if you gave that a try. So there's a situation in Canada, one that I could make a whole separate video about because of the way that because of what it really says about society. A father decided that it was not okay that some dude was vaping right next to his kid. Totally reasonable thing to do, right? And dad says, hey, can you not blow your grape flavored vape smoke in my child's face? And what happened next was truly awful. The individual who he asked to stop doing that went after him with a knife and ended his life. Just terrible. I don't really understand how this stuff happens, how people like get to this point in their life where it was like, hey, could you not like blow your secondhand smoke on my toddler, please? And then now 2 lives are ruined, right? And a family's destroyed. By the way, this happened in front of his child. Okay. So while this is happening, which is already just awful, okay, a TikToker was in the area and ran over and filmed it, posed in front of the guy's lifeless body, smiling and joking, uploaded it to Twitter. TikToker who recorded Canadian dads passing in front of his daughter and fiance at a Starbucks is now facing backlash after he did, took a selfie next to the body and smiled while filming the entire thing. Alex Bodger filmed the video of Paul Stanley Schmidt, the incident. He goes by whatever on TikTok. I'm sure he's received plenty paid for it. He appeared to smirk when he filmed the unfolding event, according to news outlet, and it said, "This MFer just died, bro. He just died, bro. Holy F." I don't really understand. Like, I mean, his face is just awful. You can see, obviously, there's, Then here's the thing. He came out and apologized, right? Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I was in shock. He went back to the very next day. He went back very next day and took another selfie in the exact same spot. So his entire pathetic apology about how, I only smiled because it was like, I was like in shock, or I was like, I didn't really know how to process what had happened. It's just a lie. He really was smiling because he knew that he was going to go viral on TikTok. That's all this kid cared about. Quote, "This is the TikTok generation. I fear for our terrible future," one Twitter user wrote. Another wrote, "I was so disturbed by his actions and words that I was honestly speechless. No emotion, period." Now here's the thing. Again, this is why I'm saying the kid is full of it, all right? He told Global News Network that he was traumatized by the incident. Yeah, that's why he went back the next day and took another picture, smoking a cig, firing up a heater in front of the red stained concrete. I don't believe you. I believe that you are a psychopath. It's not something you think you would ever see walking down the street. Then why did you pick up your phone and record it? Why didn't you help the guy? I mean, what is wrong with people? Why didn't you pick up a brick and cave in the attacker's head? I can understand being frozen in fear, but you weren't frozen in fear. You picked up your cell phone, you recorded the incident, and then you took a selfie in front of it. Then you went back the next day. Whoever this kid's parents are, failed miserably. He told the every time I think about the situation, I get this feeling in my chest of pure fear. But according to one Twitter user, he also took a selfie next to the body and then even returned the following day to smoke at the scene. The man later posted a video in which he tried to explain his actions, and he tends to smile during uncomfortable situations. Yeah, I know a lot of people who are traumatized, in these type of situations, definitely return to the scene where it happened, 12 hours later to take another selfie in front of it. He says, "So I'm walking down the road and I see what I thought was a fight. So I started running over there. I started videotaping. And then I saw some blood and I just thought maybe there was a bloody nose or something. My brain wasn't allowing me to believe what was happening. And I knew he had passed. But at the same time, this was my first time ever experiencing it. My brain was just like, oh, he's not alive. So I start screaming. No, dude, you were smiling. And everything that happened after that, the fact that you came back to the scene, this is the TikTok generation, right? This is the problem. It's like, on what planet, first of all, are you filming this and not helping somebody who's being attacked in front of his wife? And by the way, I'm not going to play the video because it is heinous. But in the video, okay, there's one part during the video in which he's filming this stuff where you can hear the guy's fiance wailing and crying in the background while he's smiling and taking a selfie. This kid is a psychopath. I would not be surprised, I am dead serious, if there were like missing pets in the neighborhood. Everything flies out the window. All your crocodile tears about being traumatized by the event, they fly right out the window when you go back the next day and post another selfie there, you sick child. I was so uncomfortable, I just didn't know what happened. so, you know, that's how in comfortable situations I put a little smile on my face. I'm sorry for the people that it pissed off. The TikToker then bizarrely goes on to say, yeah, this stuff, it doesn't faze me too much. I'll just say human life to me, the way I look at it, I don't know, is meaningless. He's dead. What can we do now? This is a kid who says human life is meaningless. 32-year-old Singh Gosa was arrested at the scene. This happened in front of his 3-year-old. I mean, everything about this person here, right? So this fellow sees an altercation, instead of stepping in to help or alerting authorities, especially when he realizes the victim is no longer with us, chooses to record his presence there. There's something seriously wrong with that line of thinking. It's not just with him. Like, this is, you know, and maybe the situation is, you know, maybe he really doesn't value human life, because who could anymore these days? I mean, every time I open Twitter, I see something truly heinous happening. You know, something just awful. And I have to consume that unwillingly, right? I open up Twitter. I even changed, you know, like who I follow now on Twitter and mute some people when they're posting this kind of stuff. Because it's like, what do you think being on TikTok all day and online, terminally online, 20 hours a day, consuming all this stuff does to the young brain? Mix into that the chance that you might get famous by filming that, get a bunch of clicks and attention. You've got a dangerous cocktail that creates literal psychopaths. The fact that this kid went back the next day, the fact that he says, well, human life doesn't have any value, I believe him. A lot of times when somebody shows you who they are, the best thing you can do is believe them, because that's exactly what this kid is.
Thank you.
He's not a 5-year-old. He's an adult man. Okay, and this is what he thinks. He filmed that and posted it online. Smiled, returned the next day. I have a feeling that this will not be the last we see of this young man in the papers. Just a feeling. Hope you enjoyed this video. I'm praying for the next generation. TikTok ban can't come fast enough, but not through the Restrict Act. We'll talk to you again real soon.
Sick fuckers. I've run into them. I've worked with a few of them. Okay. Go your own way.
I am alone with my son, by myself, a woman, and a male approached me in a parking lot. He's, excuse me, miss, I don't know why in the hell he was approaching me or what he was trying to do. And before he was probably 30 feet from me when he said, excuse me, ma'am. And I turned around and I literally yelled at him and I said, do not approach me. And he immediately started going in the other direction. And I just kept saying it over and over and over. I said, do not approach me. Do not approach me.
What's on, everyone? Jeremy here from the Quarry. I hope you're having an absolutely wonderful day. TikTok is definitely home to some of the most unhinged individuals on the planet. And the latest trend of insanity has peaked with all these, obviously, these gym weirdos that think they own the gym and that they think it's a personal, photo shoot place. Now we have a new woman who prides herself on teaching women how to be safe, putting up, and I can't even believe she uploaded this. It's one of the most absolutely unhinged videos I've ever seen, and we're gonna enjoy it together. So this is living transparently on TikTok. We're gonna, I'm gonna give the context of the video. Let's take a little look here at the story.
I'm literally shaking right now because I just had a man approach me in a parking lot.
literally shaking because a man approached her in a parking lot. But wait till you find out the reason.
And it went fine, and I'm going to tell you why it went fine and how to address it, because it was in a book I read, and this is how you're supposed to address it, but it scared me. I'm literally shaking.
Oh, she's
So
literally
this
shaking.
guy, I am alone with my son, by myself, a woman, and a male approached me in a parking lot. He's, excuse me, miss, and I don't know why in the hell he was approaching me or what he was trying to do. And before he was probably 30 feet from me when he said, excuse me, ma'am. And I turned around and I literally yelled at him and I said, do not approach me.
So the guy is 30 feet away, right? And she screams at him, do not approach me. This is somebody who watches way too many Lifetime movies.
And he immediately started going in the other direction. And I just kept saying it
Damn.
over and over and over. I said, do
Okay.
not approach me. Do not
That's
approach
nuts,
me.
man.
Wait till you find out why. Wait till you find out. It's gonna be so great.
And he, of course, got what the F did it? He started cussing and yelling, what's your problem? And I looked at him and he actually then crossed a couple cars down from my car. And he didn't come anywhere near me. He crossed a couple cars down from my car and was like, let's continue to cuss and say, what's your problem? And I said, you do not approach women in a parking lot. I just kept saying, do not approach me. You do not approach women.
I mean, this particular woman, you probably don't want to approach anywhere.
Wow.
Like yelling at no male should ever approach a woman in a parking lot.
I'm going to remember that when I see a woman perhaps choking in a parking lot, or maybe she left her keys or her wallet or, her bag at the checkout.
North Olmsted.
No male should ever approach a woman in a parking lot. And if a male does approach you, you need to turn around and use the strongest voice that you can possibly use with them. Don't be polite. They need to literally screw off. No male should be approaching you in a parking lot.
This is so great. Just wait for it.
I'm literally listening. And he, of course, got no male should ever polite.
So the story goes that she had forgotten her purse. I mean, I don't even understand what is going on here. Let's look at some of the replies, of course, before we get into the more hilarity. Here's Melody Mack. Men get treated like criminals for simply talking to women or honestly even looking in women's general direction at this point. Then said, women complain about how hard it is to meet a good guy. This kind of feminism is making life worse for all of us. People wonder why men don't come near women anymore. So I'm stunned. The man did nothing. He announced his presence, maybe to help her ask something, but she started yelling at him right away. It's not dark. There were probably more people around. Seriously. She's crazy, or this is because of societal conditioning of the enlightened liberal West, where women are commonly handled in parking spaces. Here's Mackenzie saying, I didn't know that I should be shrieking, don't approach me, at the men who offer to push my cart back while I'm loading my car after grocery shopping in broad daylight. I feel like everybody, literally everybody, no male should ever approach women in a parking lot. Replace male with another demographic and see the prejudice. I mean, look, you shouldn't be, sneaking up on women, right? Obviously, but this is very toxic feminism. This is a toxic feminine mindset we seem to ignore. The man could have been approaching for any reason, and she abused him. A flat tire, a dropped purse, or dare I say it, wanting to introduce themselves to someone they find attractive. White women need to be caged until we figure out what's going on. Women shouldn't be able to leave the house. I mean, all these, and this is the entire her entire thing. Stop approaching women in parking lots, okay? And then she's now pumped out another half dozen videos saying the exact same thing. Stay safe.
The amount of guys that are triggered by my last post is unhinged, absolutely unhinged. If anything, it has just solidified in my mind how important it is to protect you and your kids and to go with your instinct when you feel like you're in an unsafe situation. Stay safe.
I mean, this is just clearly somebody who is an unhinged.
I don't even think it happened.
Imagine you have a set of keys. Okay, you drop drop some keys or something. Be like, oh, hey, ma'am, you dropped your... And she's like, get away from me! Get away from my family! I don't really understand.
Damn.
First of all,
The amount of guys that are triggered by my
I
last.
just... The reason that she's gloating about triggering guys is because that's the entire reason she made the video.
Damn it.
Like, this had got her 1.7 million views. She averages normally just a few thousand views. She just makes an unhinged video about a situation that probably didn't happen. And when you look at kind of the rhetoric around that, you know, by the way, look, I understand. You know, as a guy who's also very large human, you know, I'm not gonna, you know, in a dark parking lot sneak up on some woman and then be offended if they're like put off by that. I think that is a very different type of scenario. But what this woman did was have a complete unhinged meltdown that perhaps she dropped a receipt or she, you know, we don't even know the context of it. But then you get articles here. The majority of American men, this is from last summer, fear being deemed creepy according to new research. Fear of being considered creepy. Fear of being considered creepy. Maybe holding single adult men back.
Yeah, real tough guys.
That according to new research from Blaine Anderson, a dating coach for men, whose study found that despite...
I've scraped enough of them off the road.
...relationships since the lockdowns,
Not so tough when they got that road rash all over them.
70% say they fear being labeled creepy impacts how they interact with women, and almost half of American men, 44%, say they fear being labeled creepy reduces the likelihood of interacting with women. Now, there are definitely some...
We're going to stop at Sheets up here.
There are guys that
Need to get some
don't
gas.
interact with women because the only women they've ever interacted with are streaming girls. But ultimately, you have these other situations where you have all these negative articles about men. Here's this article. Imagine women being able to go about their lives with no fear of men. I mean, do we think that this is a
65?
good article
Wow.
about men or bad? You know, and this, imagine men being able to go about their lives without being afraid of other men. All animals are predators or go to war with each other over territory, or for other reasons. Humans are no different. Imagine men not being falsely accused of terrible crimes by women. There have been enough articles in this rag about crazy creature from Barrow who put men in prison and ruin their lives just for kicks. They're talking about that woman who faked, you know, a terrible situation, and people actually went to prison for it. You know, women aren't always safe, even in gyms. Fear is a good way of reining them in. What? I don't even understand. Now, obviously, this is referring to a bad situation that happened where this woman was able to fight off this lunatic in a Florida gym, and that's good. You know, and this guy was a creep, and I'm glad she defended herself against him, and I wish that she had had a firearm to go even more, but, you know, help with some stats. In England,
The cop just whipped that part into
women
the
are far
fucking
less
ditch.
likely to have their life ended than men. In the year ending in March of 2022, 72% of victims were
He just
male.
whips a big
And
hunk
as
of
for
shit
safety
and
on
way into
streets,
the
that
ditch.
suggests the greater danger for women lurks in the home. In the hands of their current and former partner.
Brooklyn
In the same
Heights.
year, stranger attacks accounted for just 7% of female
Hey, friends and goat.
and 15% of male.
We're about to stop for some gas, and I'm
So,
heading over to
yeah,
one of
I would
our
say you probably need to look out for people
outpatient housing units to do a quick computer
Yeah,
repair.
You need to have an unhinged scream at any man that might be approaching you in a broad daylight and in a polite situation. That's probably...
A man approached me today in a parking lot while I was alone with my son, bent over trying to put him in his car seat. And I'm getting a lot of comments like this one, that how I responded to protect me and my son in that situation was over the top. Other people are saying he could have just been trying to help, or that someone
Yeah, the 386 too.
isn't a criminal. So let me ask you this. What does a criminal look like? At what point do you choose
Yeah.
to defend
They just fucking, they logged out of the fucking Microsoft account.
Is clearly living
So now it's lost its activation.
deep fear of men, of
Fucking idiots.
And this is,
And because I haven't set up
bad things don't happen.
a good remote stuff, they want me to come out here, which is fine. They want to pay me to drive out here, that's fine.
Power to you. But
Yeah.
You know, this is more of a result of consuming mainstream media and social media constantly.
Well, they're like, well, just tell us the password. I'm like, no, just don't log out.
And this is not a good look. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you like on it. We'll talk to you.
I'll set up a PIN number for you guys, and that's all you need. Fucking gas is expensive up here, man. Oh, Friends is the tech god. I'm just a Valkyrie. All right. Let's get some sheets made to order. Let's see, is this pump working, or is this why it's empty? And chip reader and welcome enabled. Payment card. Do not remove card file props. Okay, looks like it's working. All right. Right. It is what it is. I don't mind getting paid to do this, though. It's decent money. All right, let me get something going. What's funny is the password is not that hard. Let's get a good book going. I think I'm gonna listen to one of Michael Malice's older books that I have on here. Get it going. The Anarchist Handbook.
This is Audible.
So I'll be right
The
back.
Anarchist Handbook. Organized by Michael Malice. Written by Michael Malice and others. Narrated by Michael Malice and others. What started the craze to kill was a lecture I heard some little time ago by Emma Goldman. She was in Cleveland, and I and other anarchists went to hear her. She set me on fire. Her doctrine that all rulers should be exterminated was what set me to thinking so that my head nearly split with the pain. Miss Goldman's words went right through me, and when I left the lecture, I had made up my mind that I would have to do something heroic for the cause I loved. Leon Salgas. Chapter 1. Hoch die Anarchie. When I was in college, I took a bioethics course. Within the first couple of pages of our textbook, there was an illustration charting the spectrum of relationships between morality and the law. One end was marked as legalism, the belief that the law defined what is moral. The other end was labeled antinomianism, which was presented as the view that one's conscience is the arbiter of morality and that laws are of no moral relevance. I can't remember if it was the textbook or the professor, but our class discussion opened with, since no one believes in antinomianism, the answer is somewhere to the other side of the bar. If an ideology had a name, the odds were quite high that someone did, in fact, believe in it. Antinomianism in ethics is anarchism in a socio-political context, the belief that the imposition of authority is illegitimate. In one sense, anarchism is nothing more than a declaration that you do not speak for me. Everything else is just implementation. It is impossible to have a radical philosophy without at first sounding like a lunatic or a moron. One of the reasons for this is that most radical philosophies are lunacy, and the rest for the most part are moronic. To proclaim earnestly that this, the status quo, doesn't just need tweaks or massive changes, but a fundamental reorganization is an enormously high task to argue for. It's akin to discussing a friend and mentioning that he's very tall. One can perhaps push the envelope with an 8-foot-tall friend, but to claim someone is, say, 20 feet tall or apple feet tall simply wouldn't make any sense. The listener would have no frame of reference to even approximate what was meant to be said. This is what a society without the state sounds like to most people, but they have taken the legitimacy of government for granted all of their lives. An alternative is incomprehensible. There are many common visceral arguments against anarchism. Anarchism is a bad idea because it would lead to a government. Anarchism would mean authoritarian warlords being in charge of the society. Anarchism is utopian. It hasn't worked anywhere on Earth, except when it has, in which case doesn't count, because a government exists somewhere and therefore made it work. Anarchism cannot work on a large scale, and anarchism cannot work on a small scale either, because those areas would immediately be invaded. Inherent in this argument is that governments are, by their nature, invasive and predatory, this being the anarchist view of the nature of government. There are already several countries on Earth that don't have a military, and yes, many rely on foreign governments to protect them against invasion. The argument is that these foreign governments are there by the real government. But outsourcing the delivery of security is no different than outsourcing the delivery of food. If the security insurers were the real governments, they would be the ones giving and not taking orders. Yet all this misses the broader point. Anarchism is not a location. Anarchism is a relationship, one in which none of the parties has authority over the other. Every nation is in an anarchist relationship with one another.
All right.
If a Canadian kills an American in Mexico, there is some agreed upon mechanism to adjudicate the situation without involving a higher authority, because there is no higher authority to invoke. The situation would be the same if one's citizenship were voluntary and as easy to switch as a cell phone provider. Citizenship by geography is landline technology in a post-smartphone world. At base level, all anarchism claims to do is to resolve one major problem in interpersonal relationships: the forceful interjection of the state. Curing cancer would make things a lot better for many people. Yes, there would be costs.
CompTIA, that's
Oncologists
cool.
would be out of work, and
Do they still do A+
cancer researchers would be
certification?
subjects to explore. An anarchist world would still have murderers and thieves, and evil men and women. It simply wouldn't put to enforce their evil on everyone else via getting elected and decreeing the law. Curing cancer does not mean or imply curing diabetes, but neither does it mean or imply that curing cancer is utopian or a goal that should not be sought. As Randolph Bourne put it over a century ago, war is the health of the state, but plunder and
Green
societal
light, let's go.
conflict are not far behind when it comes to the government. It's quite easy to stump statists by asking if they have considered anarchism if there was a system of taxes and state action in place without a police force. How would it work is beside the point. Whether this would be anarchism is the question. If government was a useful mechanism for adjudicating disputes, lawsuits would be as common and as easily resolved as returning an item to the store or quitting one's job. If government was an effective mechanism at solving or preventing crime, crime would be as minor a political issue as fashion is. Everyone needs to feel safe in their person, just as everyone needs clothing. Yet only one is a political issue year in and year out. So what is the alternative to the state? Private police or none at all?
I get it.
The original version of anarchism in the left-wing European
It's a nice thing to look at and refresher,
tradition,
because
posed to domination
sometimes
by one person over another and
the
advocate
easiest
for
fix is the most basic thing.
complete equality.
In fact, you run into that more,
Right capitalists
the
define
most
themselves by
basic
opposition.
thing being the fix more often than you
The right
think.
anarchists think the left anarchists are naive and lack a fundamental understanding of
I've gone hours trying to
The left
troubleshoot an
anarchists
issue and went,
aren't anarchists
wait a
at all,
minute.
but mere apologists for corporate control and predation. Anarchism has been both a vision of a peaceful, cooperative society and an ideology of revolutionary terror.
So,
Since the term
Ain't
itself,
nothing wrong with that, man.
anarchism, is a negation, there's a great deal of disagreement on what the positive alternative would look like. The black flag comes in colors.
how's that?
On November
Plain
11,
it's the Plain Dealer
1887,
building.
4 men were hanged by the state
Cleveland
of
Plain
Illinois.
Dealer
They were
newspaper.
accused of conspiring to murder because of their common bond in preaching their anarchist views, and they became martyrs for cause. At the base of the monument erected in their memory are carved the last words of one of them.
Fucking $50 to fill a 12-gallon
The
tank.
day will come, he had proclaimed from the gallows, when our silence will be more powerful than the voices who strangle today. The Anarchist Handbook is an opportunity for all these many varied voices to speak for themselves.
$50 to
across
fill a
the
12-gallon tank.
These were human beings who saw things differently from their fellow men. They fought and they loved. They lived and they died. They disagreed on much, but they all shared one vision: freedom. Chapter 2. William Godwin from
Ooh, William Godwin.
Inquiry Concerning Political Justice and Its Influence on Morals and Happiness, 1793. Widely regarded as the first anarchist of modern times, the British William Godwin's Inquiry was one of the most influential political tracts of his era. His devastating critique of social contract theory holds just as true today. As Godwin demonstrates, the social contract is one of those ideas that would come off as incoherent and deranged if one heard them for the first time as an adult. It is allegedly an unwritten contract that presumes both consent, despite none having been given, even in the face of explicit lack of consent, and contains no specific terms, a key element of any contract. Though the social contract is often posited as the origin of a just government, no government in history has ever so much as pretended to have come about as the result of it. And now, William Godwin, as read by Arthur Herman.
Of the social contract. In the first statement of the system of a social contract, various difficulties present themselves. Who are the parties to this contract?
Whoa!
For whom did they consent? For themselves only, or for others?
Okay.
For how long a time is this contract to be considered as
Can't get
binding?
over because
This
dude is doing like 50 in a 65.
In what manner is that consent to be given? Is it tacit or declared in express terms? Little will be gained for the cause of equality and
Laying on her
justice
phone.
if our ancestors, at the first institution of government, had a right indeed of choosing the system of regulations under which they thought proper to live, but at the same time could barter away the understandings of independence of all that came after them to the latest posterity.
Fucking pompous.
But if the contract
Stinky,
must
my hands are
renewed
reeking.
at each successive generation, what periods must be fixed on for that purpose? And if I be obliged to submit to the established government till my turn comes to assent to it, upon what principle is that obligation founded? Surely not upon the contract into which my father entered before I was born. Secondly, what is the nature of the consent, in consequence of which I am to be reckoned a party to the frame of any political constitution? It's usually said that acquiescence is sufficient, and that this acquiescence is to be inferred from my living quietly under the protection of the laws. But if this be true, an end is as effectually put to all political science, all discrimination could ever be worse, as by any system invented by the most slavish sycophant. Upon this hypothesis, every government that is quietly submitted to is a lawful government, whether it be the usurpation of Cromwell or the tyranny of Caligula. Acquiescence is frequently nothing more than a choice on the part of the individual of what he deems the least evil. In many cases, it is not so much as this, since the peasant and the artisan, who form the bulk of the nation, however dissatisfied with the government of their country, seldom have it in their power to transport themselves to another. It is also to be observed upon the system of acquiescence that it is in little agreement with the established opinions and practices of mankind. Thus, what has been called the law of nations lays least stress upon the allegiance of a foreigner settling among us, though his acquiescence is certainly most complete. While natives removing into an uninhabited region are claimed by the mother country, and removing into a neighboring country are punished by municipal law if they take arms against the country in which they were born. But surely acquiescence can scarcely be construed into consent, while the individuals concerned are wholly unapprised of the authority intended to be rested upon it. Locke, the great champion of the doctrine of an original contract, has been aware of this difficulty, and therefore observes that, quote, a tacit consent indeed obliges a man to obey the laws
Cleveland skyline up there on the right.
as long as he has any possessions or enjoyment of any part of the dominions of that government. But nothing could make a man a member of the Commonwealth, but his actually entering into it by positive engagement and express promise and compact, unquote. A singular distinction, implying upon the face of it that an acquiescence, such as has just been described, is sufficient to render a man amenable to the penal regulations of society, but that his own consent is necessary to entitle him to the privileges of a citizen. A third objection to the social contract will suggest itself as soon as we attempt to ascertain the extent of the obligation, even supposing it to have been entered into in the most solemn manner by every member of the community. Allowing that I am called upon, at the period of my coming of age, for example, to declare my assent or dissent to any system of opinions or any code of practical institutes.
Yeah.
For how long a period does this declaration bind me? Am I precluded from better information for the whole course of my life? And, if not for my whole life, why for a year, a week, or even an hour? If my deliberate judgment or my real sentiment be of no avail in the case, in what sense can it be affirmed that all lawful government is founded in consent? But the question of time is not the only difficulty. If you demand my assent to any proposition, it is necessary that the proposition should be stated simply and clearly. So numerous are the varieties of human understanding, in all cases where its independence and integrity are sufficiently preserved, that there is little chance of any two men coming to a precise agreement about 10 successive propositions that are in their own nature open to debate.
It's a big building.
What, then, can be more absurd than to present to me the laws of England in 50 volumes folio and call upon me to give an honest and uninfluenced vote upon their contents? But the social contract, considered as the foundation of civil government, requires of me much more than this. I am not only obliged to consent to all the laws that are actually upon record, but to all the laws that shall hereafter be made. It was under this view of the subject that Rousseau, in tracing the consequences of the social contract, was led to assert that, quote, the great body of the people in whom the sovereign authority resides can neither delegate nor resign it. The essence of that authority, he adds, is the general will, and will cannot be represented. It must either be the same or another. There's no alternative. The deputies of the people cannot be its representatives. They are merely its attorneys. The laws, which the community does not ratify in person, are no laws, are nullities. Unquote. The difficulty here stated has been endeavored to be provided against by some late advocates for liberty in the way of addresses of adhesion.
Oh, Progressive Field, where the Cleveland Indians play there. Or, I'm sorry, the Guardians.
is deemed to be valid. But this is a very
I'm a Detroit Tiger fan.
The addressers, of course, have seldom any other alternative than that above alluded to of indiscriminate admission or rejection. There's an infinite difference between the first deliberation and the consequent exercise of a negative. The former is a real power. The latter is seldom more than a shadowy power. Not to add that addresses are a most precarious and equivocal mode of collecting the sense of a nation. They are usually voted in a tumultuous and summary manner. They are carried along by the tide of party, and the signatures annexed to them are obtained by indirect and accidental methods, while multitudes of bystanders, unless upon some extraordinary occasion, are made ignorant of or indifferent to the transaction. Lastly, if government be founded in the consent of the people, it can have no power over any individual by whom that consent is refused. If a tacit consent be not sufficient, still less can I be deemed to have consented to a measure upon which I put an express negative. This immediately follows from the observations.
Lantern Corps.
If the people, or the individuals of whom the people is constituted, cannot delegate their authority to a representative, neither can any individual delegate his authority to a majority in an assembly of which he is himself a member. That must surely be a singular species of consent, the external indications of which are often to be found in an unremitting opposition in the first instance and compulsory subjection in the second.
Chapter 3. Max Stirner from The Ego and His Own, 1844. Somewhat of a hipster precursor to Nietzsche, probably haven't heard of him. Max Stirner's idiosyncratic book, Der Einzige und seine Agenten, was supposedly regarded as too crazy to bother censoring. Sterner died largely forgotten, with the only images left behind of him.
Lake Erie off to the left.
By
Little
Marx's comrade in arms, Frederick Engels.
Lakefront Airport.
His unique, energetic text later inspired egoists and anarchists alike, though not Nietzsche, who apparently never read him, with the opening salvo of "All things are nothing to me," being a cry of proud rebellion. Stirner's reduction of reportedly morally binding concepts such as duty to mere spooks continues to resonate with anarchists today. And now, Max Stirner, as read by Ethan Suplee.
My power.
Bow.
Right is the spirit.
Made
of
turn bow
society.
back on.
If society has a will, this will is simply right. Society exists only through right. But as it endures, only exercising a sovereignty over individuals, right is its sovereign will. Aristotle says justice is the advantage of society. All existing right is foreign law. Someone makes me out to be in the right, does right by me. But should I therefore be in the right if all the world made me out so? And yet, what else is the right that I obtain in the state, in society, but a right of those foreign to me? When a blockhead makes me out in the right, I grow distrustful of my rightness. I don't like to receive it from him. But even when a wise man makes me out in the right, I nevertheless am not in the right on that account. Whether I am in the right is completely independent of the fool's making out and of the wise man's. All the same, we have coveted this right until now. We seek for right and turn to the court for that purpose. To what? To a royal, a papal, a popular court, etc.? Can a sultanic court declare another right than that which the sultan has ordained to be right? Can it make me out in the right if I seek for a right that does not agree with the sultan's law? Can it, for instance, concede to me high treason as a right, since it is assuredly not a right according to the sultan's mind? Can it, as a court of censorship, allow me the free utterance of opinion as a right, since the sultan will hear nothing of this my right? What am I seeking for in this court, then? I am seeking for
we're setting up for some
not my right. I am seeking for
full poker tables tonight.
Right.
I've already talked to quite a few people. They're
as
down
long as
for
this
tonight.
Right harmonizes with mine, to be sure.
If you
I
are
shall
357.
find it in the latter too. The state does not permit pitching into other man to man. It opposes the duel. Even every ordinary appeal to blows, notwithstanding that neither of the fighters calls the police to it, is punished, except when it is not I whacking away at you, but say the head of a family at the child. The family is entitled to this, and in its name the father,
Rockefeller
I as
Park,
am not.
Cultural Gardens.
The Vossischitai presents to us the commonwealth of right. There everything is to be decided by the judge and a court. It ranks the Supreme Court of Censorship as a court where right is declared. What sort of right? The right of the censorship? To recognize the sentences of that court as right, one must regard the censorship as right. But it is thought, nevertheless, that this court offers a protection. Yes, protection against an individual censor's error. It protects only the censorship legislature against false interpretation of his will, at the same time making his statute, by the sacred power of right, all the firmer against writers. Whether I am in the right or not, there is no judge but myself. Others can judge only whether they endorse my right and whether it exists as right for them too. In the meantime, let us take
all right, no worries, Bob. I'm going to be shutting off in about 5 minutes anyway, before the return trip. I'll go back live again for the return trip. I'll catch you later.
Laws, I am to subordinate myself.
The 2-hour drive home, so.
Sacred. A sense of right and law-abiding mind of such a sort is so firmly plain right, and then every other may see to it how to likewise maintain it for himself. The right of all, for example, eat, is a right of every individual. Let him not take care for all, though. Let him grow zealous for it as a right of all. But the social reformers preach to us a law of society. There the individual becomes society's slave and is in the right only when society makes him out in the right,
when he lives according to society's statutes and so is loyal. Whether I am loyal under despotism or in a society a la Whiteling, it is the same under despotism or in a society a la Whiteling. It is the same absence of right insofar as both cases I have not my right but foreign right. Right insofar as both cases I have not my right but foreign right. In consideration of right, the question is always asked, what or who gives me this right to it? Answer, God, love, reason, nature, humanity, etc. No, only your might, your power gives you the right. Your reason, therefore, may give it to you. Communism, which assumes that men have equal rights by nature, contradicts its own proposition until it comes to this, that men have no right at all by nature. For it is not willing to recognize, for instance, that parents have, by nature, rights as against their children, or the children as against the parents. It abolishes the family. Nature gives parents, brothers, and so on no right at all. Altogether, this entire revolutionary or Babavist principle rests on a religious, that is, false, view of things. Who can ask after right if he does not occupy the religious standpoint himself? Is not right a religious concept, something sacred? Why equality of rights, as the revolution propounded it, is only another name for Christian equality, the equality of the brethren, of God's children, of Christians, in short, fraternite. Each and every inquiry after right deserves to be lashed with Schiller's words. Many a year I've used my nose to smell the onion and the rose. Is there any proof which shows that I've right to that same nose? When the revolution stamped equality as a right, it took flight into the religious domain, into the region of the sacred, of the ideal. Hence, since then, the fight for the sacred, inalienable rights of man against the eternal rights of man, the well-earned rights of the established order, are quite naturally and with equal right brought to bear.
Very bad connection.
Right against right, where of course one is decried by the other as wrong. This has been the contest of rights since the revolution. You want to be in the right as against the rest, that you cannot, as against them you remain forever in the wrong. For they surely would not be your opponents if they were not in their right too. They will always make you out in the wrong. But as against the right of the rest, yours is a higher, greater, more powerful right, is it not?
First time I've seen that pop
No
up.
such thing. Your right is not more powerful if you are not more powerful. Have Chinese subjects a right to freedom? Just bestow it on them. And then look how far you have gone wrong in your attempt. Because they do not know how to use freedom, they have no right to it. In clearer terms, because they have not freedom, they have not the right to it. Children have no right to the condition of majority because they are not of age, because they are children. Peoples that let themselves be kept in nonage have no rights to the condition of majority. If they cease to be in nonage, then only would they have the right to be of age. This means nothing else than what you have the power to be, you have the right to. I derive all right and all warrant from me. I am entitled to everything that I have in my power.
Oh, 315.
I am entitled to overthrow Zeus, Jehovah, God, if I can. If I cannot, then these gods will always remain in the right and in power against me. And what I do will be fear their right and their power in impotent God-fearingness, to keep their commandments and believe that I do right in everything that I do according to their right. About the Russian boundary sentinels that think themselves rightly entitled to shoot dead the suspicious persons who are escaping, since they murder by superior authority with right. But I am entitled by myself to murder if I myself do not forbid it to myself, if I myself do not fear murder as a wrong. This view of things lies at the foundation of Chasimo's poem, Das Mortadal, where the gray-haired Indian murderer compels reverence from the white man whose brethren he has murdered. The only thing I am not entitled to is what I do not do with a free cheer, that is, what I do not entitle myself to.
All right, let me turn on the scanner.
Yeah, you disregard Euclid. The grandmother picked up the juvenile and they're heading to an address in Upton. I'll be heading over there shortly.
Copy. Are you to Charlie 25 or Sam 24 for info?
Go ahead.
Alright, so I talked to the father on the phone. Per conversation I had with OIC earlier.
Copy.
The father is telling me that the juvenile is not with him. The juvenile called him from an unknown number saying that he was okay. The father said that he told the child's mother this, but the juvenile is not telling him where he's at or who he's with. I advised him we're making that report. He said the juvenile's not missing, he's with a family friend, but he would not tell me who or where the juvenile is.
Radio's EMS already there?
So they advised they were en route. They did not say if they would have a unit on scene.
Adam 21 radio, 3 right back, Cleveland Clinic, ending miles 291. Radio, call 5200, please. Sam, radio.
Go ahead.
If you have a phone number for your mother, can you relay that info to her? See if she might have an idea who we could possibly be with.
She's in the lobby?
I'm with mom right now. He says mom is still here in the lobby? Correct, I'm talking to her right now. Copy.
Do you still want me to have Adam 23 and Adam 25 tour anywhere? I mean, the father's saying he doesn't have them, but the father's not telling me who does. Adam 27, are you still on Dino Valley?
Yes. Yeah, they can continue to tour until we find out a better location or where you might be at.
The landlord's coming back to the house. He wants to confirm. I'm sorry, you broke off. What? Radio Adam 27 or code 2 and 8 zone?
Okay. Yeah, they can continue to look for the child until we find out. Tom 67 radio.
Tom 67, God.
Traffic stops could be cited. Sent licensed driver on scene. Stop form completed. Clear kid.
All right, and Charlie 25, I told the father is almost probably going to be calling him back if they answer his phone. So he was aware that we were probably going to be calling him back. 1721.
Sorry, 25.
All right. At the housing. I'll kick this back on when I'm heading home.
The last physical location we have was 2501
Thanks,
East 5.
whoever's still here.
Running south towards Woodland.